Today, I want to talk about something that I completely forgot was even a thing. Sometime last year in 2020, I think it was around the time Resident Evil 3 came out, there was a lot of news circulating basically saying that Resident Evil 4 Remake has already started production. And at the time I was like, that's kind of crazy because 3 just came out barely a year after 2. Are they really gonna put 4 out that quickly? And then, of course, we got the Resident Evil Village announcement instead later in the year, which I was very happy about because I did not want 3 remakes in a row. But after Village came out, I feel like pretty much everyone kind of forgot that there was an alleged Resident Evil 4 remake in the works. There was that Facebook announcement about them doing their VR thing for Resident Evil 4, but that's, not a remake. It's just a VR, experience, I guess you could say. So, having just recently randomly remembered this, I started looking at some articles and I found some really interesting information that I can't exactly verify if it's true or not, because after all, these are leaks. But to be honest, some of it sounds pretty believable. And I mean, like a giant premise for Resident Evil Village was leaked a while ago with the werewolves and the quote unquote vampires and stuff like that. And a lot of the stuff in this article I'm about to read seems pretty believable. So, this is taken from videogameschronicle.com. Capcom's in-development Resident Evil 4 remake has seen a major change of leadership due to disagreements over its direction, according to people with knowledge of the project. New studio M2 has seen its role significantly reduced on the unannounced project, and mainline Resident Evil studio Capcom Division 1 has been brought in to lead a new direction. So Division 1 is the main developing studio for Capcom, and if you didn't know already, with how many Resident Evil games have been coming out recently, there's multiple studios that work on these games. It would just be impossible for one studio to pump out these games as fast as they do. So this M2 studio that's mentioned in the article was actually like a supporting studio for the Resident Evil 3 remake, but apparently for Resident Evil 4, they were going to be the primary studio developing it. I thought this next portion of the article was really interesting. It's believed that the disagreements that led to M2's reduced role involved the studio's desire to stick faithfully to the template of the original Resident Evil 4, partly influenced by backlash to Resident Evil 3's remake, which did not include significant portions of the original PlayStation game, much to fans' disappointment. Again, there's no way to prove if this is true, but I, you know, also think that it's a very likely possibility. And just hearing that, many people with strong feelings of how Resident Evil 3 Remake went would probably be very upset with Capcom's decision, but honestly, it's really hard to say if it's a good decision or not because we don't know what M2 wanted to put in the game. Like, from my personal point of view, if they were like, we really need to keep the tank controls to stay true to the original game's template, I'd be like, I don't know about that. Maybe have like an optional mode where you can turn on tank controls, but I don't think you should build the game around it again. But of course, if they're talking about cutting out like a certain area of the game a lot of people really like, that's a different, that's a different issue. The article goes on to say Capcom's production team, however, is said to prefer a different direction, which would see Resident Evil 4's remake inspired by the original, but with its own unique take on features, story elements, and environments not necessarily confined to the blueprint of the original, similar to Resident Evil 2's use of Mr. X. Sources said that the Resident Evil 4 remake would now be partially rebooted under the new mandate, which could see its release delayed by as much as the year 2023. All Capcom has to do is bring up the Resident Evil 2 remake and I'm on board. But obviously it didn't work as well with 3. But I think that had a lot to do with 3 coming out way too soon after 2. And that brings me to my main point of this whole video, and it's that I think it's good for this game to be delayed until like 2023, because the games that have been coming out since Resident Evil 2 Remake, RE2 Remake, RE3 Remake, and Resident Evil Village, all coming out in successive years, all being very high quality games, they're not spin-off games like Umbrella Corp. They need to take their time on it. And when you have so many different studios working on all these different games, yeah, the vision for what you want the game to be like can get confusing. And in this case, if they're really restarting production, it makes me worried that they're gonna rush it and have another really short game that is good, but it could have been way better if they took their time. Now, a part of the reason why I can wait so long for this remake is probably because Resident Evil 4 is nowhere near the top of my list of favorite Resident Evil games. I'd much rather see 1 get a brand new remake or Code Veronica, but I'm excited about a Resident Evil 4 remake, particularly for better controls. But Resident Evil 4 is kind of like uncharted territory for these remakes. They nailed the gameplay conversion from the Resident Evil 2 original to the remake, and they were able to replicate that with 3 because they have the same type of gameplay. But Resident Evil 4 plays very different from those 2 games. It plays more like Resident Evil Village than it does 2 or 3, which is why a small part of me thinks that if they do remake this game, they might remake it in first person. I mean, the VR one's already going to be in first person since it's VR, so they'll be able to see how the gameplay works like that, so there may be a lot of controversy if that comes to fruition. But regardless, it's important to be grateful and patient, because with a game series as old as Resident Evil, it's pretty uncommon to get such high quality games and remakes this close to each other, if at all. So if there's a 2 or 3 year break from the release of a new Resident Evil, I'm not counting Reverse, we'll have to just suck it up and hope that they make the greatest remake or new game of all time. But hey, in the meantime, at least there's going to be Resident Evil Village DLC. But with that, I think I've said all I've wanted to say. This information has been out for a little while now, but I just wanted to give my 2 cents, and since I kind of forgot all this even was a thing. So let me know if you have any ideas for how this remake's going to turn out, or if you even think this remake's going to happen, because it's still unannounced, even though people have been talking about it a good bit. And if you made it to the end of the video, I'm not going to ask you to subscribe. I'm just going to plant the idea of it in your head. Just think about it. By the way, stream this weekend. Keep an eye out.